Hai semua, Assalamualaikum, apa khabar? Welcome to Kita Family. We're back with episode 13.
Yes.
I think. Yes, episode 13. Okay, Kita Family adalah sebuah podcast yang membincangkan perihal tentang hidup bermasyarakat, hidup bersama, menghargai kepelbagaian sesama kita, sama ada dari segi rupa, bangsa, agama dan juga dari segi keupayaan. Kami di sini hendak membincangkan perkara yang mengambil kira kepentingan segenap lapisan masyarakat, termasuk mereka yang berkelainan atau kurang upaya. So that's what Kita Family is about. And today we have two more interesting topics yang berkaitan dengan, I don't know if it's a series kan ladies, tapi kita setakat ini pernah membincangkan beberapa perkara yang kita sebagai ibu telah mempelajari dalam perjalanan kita mempunyai anak yang neurodivergent. So we have talked about in the past tentang untuk membina keyakinan diri, untuk merasakan bahawa kita tidak keseorangan, right? You're not alone. Then we talk about the importance of continuous learning. Episode yang baru ini kita juga membincangkan apakah kepentingan untuk tidak terlalu membanding-bandingkan.
Yes.
Yeah, and then also
Menjadi detektif.
we also talked about the importance of learning how to be detective. Yes. So kita nak teruskan dengan antara 10 lah, lebih kurang 10 perkara yang kita telah belajar dalam perjalanan kita sepanjang ini. Let me just introduce everybody who's here today. We are missing our Didi from Sabah, but in the studio hari ini sebelah kiri saya Anil.
Hai.
Sebelah kanan saya ada 2 orang. So paling dekat dengan saya, this is Desiree.
Hello.
And over there is SK.
Apa khabar?
Yeah. So there's 4 of us today, Kita Family, and we are going to be speaking about the next 2 topics. Hari ini kita akan membincangkan 2 topik lagi yang telah kami belajar, iaitu satu, intervensi dan memahami bahawa intervensi adalah satu keperluan sepanjang hayat. Yeah, so that's one. And topik kedua adalah kenali pakar. Kenali pakar and have a relationship with them. Get to know the experts and have a relationship with them. So these are the 2 things we're going to talk about today. Okay, so let's kick off. I actually want to see if we all have a common understanding of apakah intervensi sebenarnya, right? So I'm going to put like a 2-in-1 and invite each of you to share your thoughts, please. Yeah, apakah intervensi sebenarnya, dan kedua, kalau intervensi ini adalah penting, dan saya pun menyebut bahawa tajuk topik kita hari ini adalah bahawa intervensi ini penting untuk kita lihat dan keperluannya sepanjang hayat. Kenapa orang cuma sebut tentang early intervention? Yeah, so what does it look like later on and things like that. So I would like to start off with Desiree. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Thank you, Nori. Sebelum kita bermula mengupas topik ni, maybe I can share tentang perkataan intervensi ni. Ada di antara self-advocate yang telah dewasa, maybe dia kurang suka or there's a preference to not use the word intervention tetapi guna perkataan support or sokongan. Right?
Okay.
So, I think dalam perjalanan kami memang tak ada a perfect reference for everything.
Yes,
So I
that's
think
true.
it's the reason why I'm bringing it up is so that we're just made aware. Sebab awareness tu memang penting lah.
Boleh tak Desiree sokong apa sebab mereka mungkin tak berapa suka perkataan intervention?
Saya rasa because dekat Malaysia ni and from my own personal experience, memang banyak penekanan terhadap early intervention program. So when we use the word intervensi or intervention, banyak penekanan kepada kanak-kanak, remaja, tetapi bila mereka meningkat dalam umur ke peringkat dewasa, if you're seeing say a psychiatrist, is it is it intervention or is it sokongan? Is it a support? Right? So there is that. I mean, it's a rhetorical question. I'm not asking us to answer that today. Tapi it's something for us to consider. Maybe bila umur anak kami meningkat, intervensi is sometimes also, I believe some people find it too clinical. Perhaps. Tetapi sokongan yang diperlukan is a non-tangible Kan, for example macam OT, you boleh nampak the exercises that you do. Tetapi if it's like a counselling session or jumpa dengan pakar psychiatry or psychologist to speak about managing your emotions, that is for me dia lebih kepada sokongan daripada intervensi.
Also now I'm thinking about it. Kalau kita fikirkan di luar konteks OKU lah, masyarakat kita. Bila kita gunakan perkataan intervention ni kadang-kadang, it is usually when there's a problem.
Yeah.
Yes.
Kan?
Betul.
Yeah. It's like
You are
totally
right.
intervention needed.
Yes.
You know, something is going
Urgent.
on with this person, whatever, and yes,
Urgent,
urgency and things like that. So maybe because dia bukanlah satu perkataan yang neutral,
Yeah.
dan
And it's to
mempunyai-
avert something or
Yes.
redirect something.
Right, yeah.
So intervention is to redirect something. So that means perjalanan itu perlulah mengambil arah yang lain daripada perjalanan yang
That's
natural.
right. So ini mungkin juga berhubung kait dengan mereka yang mungkin hendak merawat autism
Yes.
dari segi like macam
To-
sebagai penyakit, for
to
example,
fix
right? To
the
fix it,
behaviour
yes, to fix
sometimes,
it,
kan?
or it's like a disease. It's not wanted at all.
Yeah.
As opposed to apakah ciri-ciri yang memang kita hendak melihatkan perubahan yang lebih positif. Ini macam nak lenyapkan you know,
Exactly.
suatu keadaan yang ada lah. Okay, so right, would you like to continue sambung Desiree tentang satu
Early
definisi
intervention.
intervensi itu dah ada, tetapi kenapa hanya early intervention yang kerap kali disebutkan?
I feel from my experience, sebab anak saya pun baru berumur 9 tahun. So for me, we have just crossed from early intervention to
The next phase.
the next phase, which is
doesn't have a name.
which doesn't have a name. So I just call it the next step.
Yes.
Kan?
That's a good one.
Yeah, the next step. Banyak penekanan kepada early intervention sebab I think also a lot of research out there memang menekankan there's more data, there's more research on early intervention and how the aim of early intervention kadang-kadang in some cases is to reintegrate the child from early intervention or special needs school setting to a mainstream school. And if we look dekat Malaysia ni, secara lazimnya, if you're in the government hospital system, memang those are the guidelines that they are guided by.
Yeah.
Kan? Go for the intervention, go for speech therapy, OT or whatever kind of
Supaya
therapies needed
dapat
with the
pergi ke sekolah.
aim of going to mainstream aliran perdana. So I
School
think
readiness.
School readiness. Banyak
Yes.
penekanan sometimes in my opinion in certain cases unnecessary pressure not just on the child tapi on the parents juga. Some kids memang boleh. And I really want to acknowledge parents yang memang put in the effort and children that put in the effort dan memang boleh integrate into aliran perdana ke sekolah PPKI, the integrated schools.
Yep.
Memang boleh and that's great. Tetapi it's also important to acknowledge bukan semua boleh masuk are ready for that kind of setting.
I think it's a combination of two things. And then maybe I'd like to invite Anit to say something about this because kita pernah berbual tentang ini. I think satu, ada kemungkinan bahawa anak belum bersedia. Tetapi mungkin sekolah tu sendiri tidak bersedia untuk menerima anak kita yang memerlukan sokongan tambahan. So keadaan yang sedia ada dan kalau kita sebut pun sebagai contoh sekolah PPKI kan, pendidikan khas integrasi. Integration is not the same as inclusion.
Yeah.
Ya, integrasi maknanya anak-anak yang mempunyai diagnosis yang berbeza dari kanak-kanak yang tipikal memerlukan sokongan tambahan, mereka akan ada bersama menggunakan fasiliti kawasan sekolah. Mereka memang ada bilik darjah di situ, tetapi mereka biasanya akan berada di dalam kelas yang berasingan, right?
Yep.
Dan mungkin hanya perhimpunan, maybe hari sukan atau hari-hari perayaan istimewa or something like that. Tetapi kecuali seorang anak tu dapat masuk kepada kelas aliran perdana, right? There's no sort of crossover. There's no kind of like
bridge.
There's no, I think the bridge is not a bridge that is there every day.
No,
And that you
isn't.
cross back and forth, right?
Yes,
You're either here or you're
there.
either there.
You're there.
So I need if you can talk to us about what are your thoughts on this early intervention, and is there a necessity to only look at intervention from the context of its purpose is to get you ready for school? Adakah itu sepatutnya?
Okay, with my journey, I think sebab masa tu kesedaran belum di tahap yang sekarang. So it was already, he was 14 years ago, and masa tu the important thing was, dia boleh masuk sekolah atau tidak. There was no such thing as an alternate. So you either get him ready for school or you don't. So it became very rigid in that way. That early intervention not just entailed therapy, tetapi untuk kesediaan sekolah, ada yang mencadangkan, we know we are Malaysians and we are Asians. Tuition. Okay.
Yes,
So
of course.
tuition. And then, at tuition, there would be emphasis like what they started in OT about holding the pencil, about how to write, and starting with a thicker pencil, and then making and forming words, and hand-eye coordination to copy from the board onto a book. And all that became necessary skills, which, when I look back, never actually happened with me when I was a kid. So I realized that the expectations for school, persediaan yang perlu ada bagi kanak-kanak hari ini memang sangat berlainan daripada zaman saya menjadi seorang pelajar. And this also made me realize that sebab the syllabus pun dah lain. So like we always say, bila kita pergi sekolah darjah 1 dulu, mula-mula kita belajar ABC. Tapi sekarang kalau dah darjah 1, seseorang pelajar itu perlu mengenal huruf, mengenal nombor, dah boleh menulis. The expectation was a lot higher. So jadi intervensi itu menjadi satu yang amat penting kerana ia adalah dari segi kelakuan seseorang pelajar dan juga isu akademiknya. So kelakuan dia adalah sama ada boleh duduk, boleh ambil arahan, boleh mengeluarkan buku, boleh mengeluarkan colour pencil.
Keperluan di bilik darjah, basically.
Keperluan di bilik darjah.
Sangat khusus kan sebenarnya?
Sangat khusus.
Okay, so Ani, kita dah kawan lama kan? And I know that the two of us, and I think, a few of us actually, kita pernah menjangkan bahawa kita tidak menyesali lah. We don't want to regret the things that we have done.
Yeah.
We talk about giving ourselves grace and all that. So I want to say that first of all. And keduanya, I think, so it's like, I think we accept that that's what it is, right? I think I want to ask you specifically. Are you trying to say because, and you made reference to tahap pengetahuan bukan di tahap sekarang sebagai contoh.
Yeah.
Adakah jika ada peluang ataupun I would say kalau memberi nasihat kepada ibu bapa yang lain, adakah Anik juga akan mengatakan bahawa you need this intervention because your kid needs to go to school?
I would say you need the intervention because your kid needs life skills, tetapi bukan khususnya untuk masuk ke bilik darjah pada masa yang kesemua orang, sesemua orang itu masuk
Secara purata lah,
secara
secara
purata,
umum, like if
7 years old kena masuk darjah 1.
Setuju. Saya setuju.
That is not, that's not the way it should be, because dulu ni ada yang kawan-kawan yang saya percayai masuk darjah 1 yang memang pada masa itu belajar ABC, and then balik rumah dia diberi muka surat yang lebih untuk tulis. And then slowly dia catch up. Kadang-kadang at the end of standard 1, kadang-kadang tahun 2, kadang-kadang tahun 3. Tapi by the time, I'm the zaman yang pentaksiran darjah 5, bukan UPSR. Okay. And by that time, everybody dah at the same level or similar level. So it was given that time. There was no emphasis on 3 R's. There was no emphasis on KSSR. There was no emphasis on the ujian litmus that was being done. So currently, the schools are driven by that. Sebab co-curriculum dah menjadi satu yang ditetapkan oleh Kementerian Pendidikan. And I'm not saying it's wrong. It's what
Wait, sorry, curriculum you mean?
Curriculum.
Not co-curriculum.
yeah,
Okay,
sorry,
curriculum.
curriculum
Yeah.
ditetapkan oleh Kementerian Pendidikan. And that's not wrong. It is for the masses. Tetapi kalau anak kita neurodivergent, tidak semestinya anak itu perlu masuk darjah 1 bila dia 7 tahun. So kalau kita perlu delay atau perlu tunggu sedikit supaya anak kita bersedia untuk pergi ke sekolah, untuk berkawan, then that is the best thing for the child. Sebab part of the battle of intervention is also to make the child ready to accept being away from the house, away from their surroundings, in a different environment for a certain period of time with people that they don't ordinarily see.
And that sounds more like a life skill in many situations.
Absolutely.
Berbanding kan cara untuk memegang pensel yang betul, you know, and
These
things like
colour
that,
within
right?
the lines. Apa ni?
Oh
Apa ni?
my goodness, the colouring within the lines and the need to colour.
Yeah.
Workbook ni kalau kita jawab soalan ke ataupun kertas kerja, tapi kalau kita tak colour gambar yang ada tu, macam wow, that's a big problem. Zaman saya macam tu.
Colour pun kena sesuai. Kalau you colour pink untuk giraffe tak sesuai. It must be brown. Even if you want to be creative, you can't.
Tak boleh
Tak
sebab,
boleh.
sebab tak ada
Salah.
zirafah warna merah jambu.
Salah. There's no pink giraffe.
They're going to
It's the
assess you on that as well.
stereotyping kan,
Yeah.
even from very young.
Okay, so kakak wants to jump in. This is a great
I'm gonna
time.
jump in
Please, yeah.
Because I, if I just taruhkan my medical hat sedikit, if I revisit the term early intervention ni, sebenarnya the brain is, as a child, there's a huge pace of development, generally up to 8 years old. So the phrase early intervention can actually apply to as early as at birth.
Yeah.
And in a way, I think when this was
Yang
called,
berisiko tinggi and things
betul,
like that. Okay.
because when this term was birth, the understanding even now, the earlier we are able to support, to intervene, the more opportunity lah, kan, for us to go and support the growing brain untuk the different areas of development, which is primarily we know about the physical development. A very key one is the social emotional development,
Yes.
and the behavior is an aspect.
Yeah.
And finally, we speak about the academic or intellectual development. So, as I was listening to all of us earlier, sometimes the urgency may be out of not understanding that at a different stage, we need to be aware as parents, as educators, what is our child supposed to be able to do.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
This is developmental milestones.
It's just developmental milestones.
Okay.
So when the phrase early intervention is used, the general idea is earlier, then we can learn on a longer pathway, make a correction. That is the general idea.
But there's also the science to it, right?
Because the
of brain
science of
development.
brain development,
Okay. So ada kepentingannya dan
yeah.
ada sense of urgency juga.
Yeah.
There is a basis for that.
That's
However, so please continue.
however, I believe that we, as parents, educators, as professionals, we still need to reference back, how does the brain develop? Hence, if we are looking at, and this is quite typical, kesalahannya to look at the chronological age. And what we are talking about dalam masalah pembelajaran sebenarnya is what we call neurodevelopmentally. Bila brainnya, the age of the chronological age, like if you are 8, perhaps the developmental age
It's 5.
is 5.
Yes.
Yeah.
Dalam
For
neurodivergent
intellectual,
individuals,
but at other aspects, they may have an age at a different stage. I think maybe that's the departure of wrong urgency without understanding how the milestones. So, in simple terms, brilliant that you remind me. I think it's imperative, whether we are parents, to learn what are the milestones achievable. And as a professional, as an educator, we need to be able to be clear. There is the chronological age,
And which is
there's a-
typical. but
which is
there's
typical,
also- yeah.
or perhaps this child is neurologically at an age behind, or guess what? The genius people on that side of the spectrum,
Are
which we
ahead.
selalu lupakan, they may be at 8 chronologically, but they are already thinking at 11. Now, let me give you an example. Now, if your body is at 8 years old physically,
Yes.
but you are thinking of very serious matters at 12, at 18, the worries of the world does sit on you. And that's why as we focus on delayed development, the even advanced intellectually will have their burden.
Betul. Yeah.
Kan?
So it's not just dari segi kemahiran dan benda atau perkara-perkara yang mungkin dari segi maklumat, ilmu pengetahuan yang mungkin kita nampak kebijaksanaan, kepandaian dia itu, tapi kalau kita fikirkan bahawa kalau otak dia tu pun dah dapat memikirkan benda-benda seperti itu,
Yeah.
dan dia mungkin akan memikirkan benda-benda yang difikirkan oleh orang yang lebih dewasa,
Betul.
termasuk the concerns and worries and burdens and
Of the
stresses
world.
lah. Right?
Yes. So it becomes then
Sorry, I was saying that from myself, repeating you, because it's true. Sometimes we think that this genius thing, everything is good about it.
No,
Yes.
They
it's-
need more support sometimes.
Yes.
Yes. So
And I
coming
use
back,
the word support, right? They
yes,
need
coming
more
back
support.
then, why we can embrace and be more aware. Early intervention has got its needed purpose, but it needs to be understood.
Yeah.
Right, that it cannot become a fear mode on parents. I love the earlier discussions how we need to assure parents don't get pressured unnecessarily,
Yeah.
but let's do follow signs
Yes.
because that's how our body grows. Yeah,
Yes.
developmentally.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
The-
So, let's move on then. Like, we just had mentioned just now that kita tak ada nama untuk fasa selepas early
Yes.
intervention ni.
Yeah. The tweenvention.
Yeah, sure.
That applies to all, to everyone.
That is that
So sebenarnya,
yeah.
if I can just share in the stages, actually in the professional sphere, we do use school age.
Okay.
Yeah. And then they progress from toddler to school age. That's when typically kalau Malaysia ni, primary school sekolah rendah, yeah,
Umur
is
7.
school age.
Yeah.
Yeah. And after that, they become the teen and youth, adolescent. Okay. And that is typically from 12 or 13 to 18 years old. And for the medical team, they use up to 18 as pediatric.
Okay.
Then beyond 18, from 19 onwards, they then refer it to adults.
Okay. So,
Ada tahap-tahapnya.
what does it look like? Obviously, it depends on the individual juga, right? Setakat mana seorang memerlukan terapi tertentu, right? Like terapi cara kerja, like OT, occupational therapy,
Yeah.
might be needed for up to a certain point for some individuals,
Yes. Okay.
and some may need it for longer.
Yes.
Same with speech.
Yes.
But but what do you think? Actually, is it possible that some therapies might be needed, lifelong? Does intervention kind of look the same, except the only thing that changes is fasa, perkembangan manusia ni, tetapi kita tetap jumpa pakai yang sama ke? Macam mana, like what does it look like if it's lifelong, for example?
So if we all understand and are aware that in autism that we are speaking about, it is a neurodevelopmental makeup Yeah. Maybe I'll answer it the other way. Kalau you ada high blood pressure,
Yeah.
do you stop taking your high blood pressure medication?
No.
Rarely, I think.
No.
I think it requires
So-
massive
so-
lifestyle
so in a
change to do that.
similar-
So majority tak. Majority tidak.
Most of,
Majority,
actually, you will likely, and most of the time, I know there are other facets, but you will be taking your medication lifelong.
Yes.
So let's then look at the neurodevelopmental conditions. The condition there is lifelong, but through the different either therapeutic intervention, support, learning, exposure, your brain changes.
Okay.
So you may have the occupational therapist working with you at different stages, but working on different aspects.
Okay.
Okay. Let me maybe if I use the psychologist or clinical psychologist, it might be a bit easier. At childhood, the social anxiety will appear or manifest as school refusal.
Okay.
Kan?
Okay.
Then the clinical psychologist will work with the child in their behavioral approach to help the child learn skills or tactics to be calmer. Betul? That is social anxiety so that they can balik sekolah.
Strategies to respond to the needs of that age group or,
That's
or,
right.
or
So-
that child specifically.
Betul.
Kan?
The
Okay.
reference there is social anxiety or school refusal lah.
Okay. So social anxiety, obviously, of an older person will look different, right?
It looks different, and that's
Could
when
be for going out.
we then talk about stress, anxiety,
Yes.
and it's then often is intermixed with depression. And that clinical psychologist, or by this time, the psychiatrist, will still attend to that underlying need, which may be more prominent than a typical person.
Okay.
That's how throughout the lifespan of an individual, the needs will be there based on situation, based on pressures of life, just like all of us have.
Yep.
So yes, I would dare say, even now with Joshua, he's 15, he still sees the occupational therapist, but for a different aspect. So instead of regulating his movement and his body, we are now working with our OT on executive functioning, organizing, planning,
Yes.
to prepare him for university. Yeah. So I would say current journey, and I would ask all of us to have open minds. The therapies will change.
Yeah, if I can, on that point, if I can invite you to also say sometimes, we know that although peratusan dia kecil, ya, ada juga yang katanya tidak lagi memerlukan diagnosis atau outgrown or something, right? Or
Or discharge from therapy.
yes, that's
yes.
right. So akan ada situasi begitu. But if we understand, and this is I think the current consensus, that okay, as we are at the very end of Autism Awareness Month, we'll use that as a reference still. Ini adalah sesuatu perkara yang menjadi sebahagian dari seorang individu, and just as they are, right?
Yes.
That means sepanjang hayat.
Yes.
That's what it is. It was there from birth
Yeah.
sampai ke bila-bila. It's just cuma macam mana kita dapat menguruskannya, right? So, but let's say it is for individuals like that. So, are there ever situations? I think there are, but so that's why I'm asking
Definitely.
you, where it's like, no, I'm fine now. Does not fit the diagnosis. Discharged from therapy.
Yes.
But so
me-
do we just say that's it? We're done. We're going to close the book and chapter, and
I don't need to see
we
OT
don't
ever
need-
again.
yeah,
Bye
no more
bye.
intervention, and we thank God and celebrate.
Yeah.
Like what? What?
I'm so glad this has come up. Let me share again our personal journey with Joshua. Sebenarnya dari PDD NOS, or at that time, that was that definition, which is now more, it's been reclassified. So from autism, he did have his diagnosis changed
Pervasive developmental delay not otherwise specified, right?
because when
PDD-NOS.
he was diagnosed at
Okay.
18 months, at that time, DSM is not the current DSM.
Yeah.
They had that diagnosis. But let's just take this forward a bit.
Okay.
He's autistic, but when we evaluated Joshua at between 7 and 8, his diagnosis had changed to social communication disorder, and he was dual exceptional, which means they have discovered that he's high intellectual ability, but he still has got some areas of neurodevelopmental issues not at par with his age. And
Okay.
let me share with you the importance of this. Is we now know the OKU card.
Right.
This big discussion about I do not want my child to be OKU. We have a subcategory which is under autism. And I know that under the subcategory, you are able to cancel the ASD diagnosis because that's the science who says with intervention, and that's why you want intervention.
You might
Things
not have
do
to
change.
Yeah.
And I want to encourage Ibu Bapa ni, please don't fear a diagnosis. If I wear the medical hat, it's intended to structure the support. That's the benefit of a diagnosis. And if I take it to the adult group, when they are diagnosed as an adult, when they are later, they're often grateful for the
Yes, and
diagnosis.
relieved.
Very, very
To know
relieved.
what's happening.
They
Yes.
finally understand.
Yeah, they finally
Yeah.
get it, and that means you can get the support you need. Just
That's
imagine if we take it to the super basic level of like, adakah kita memerlukan cermin mata?
Yeah.
So can you imagine if somebody ignored the fact that you needed to
Yes.
And you've been
glasses
struggling
or
to
lenses,
see.
you cannot
Yeah.
see.
So coming
So,
back then to the
yeah.
topic of the diagnosis can change. And let's then address the question about discharging. Joshua has been again. Today I like to use a lot of my personal example to
yeah.
share
It's okay, please
our
do.
journey.
Yeah.
Joshua was discharged from the simple speech and communication therapy because he, with input, with intervention, responded to his age appropriateness.
Yes.
However, there's only one aspect.
Right.
Then we continued social communication intervention done by the speech therapist.
Right. So
That's-
it's again seeing the same sort of expertise,
Is the
but
same-
the needs had changed.
That's
so maknanya
right.
dia punya method
Dengan dia
apa
punya
cara-cara
matlamat.
Ciri-cirinya sudah
Ah.
berubah.
Yeah. And matlamat pun sangat lain.
Yeah. So again, that's
Okay.
why we say, please don't shut off therapy. If you see success, be mindful.
Yeah.
With pressures, as we know, even as typical, when we are stressed, we lose our speech.
Yes.
Yes.
We spoke about that before.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
When we are stressed,
Tersasul.
we are
Yeah.
not
Yes.
tersasul. We
Yes.
tak
Tergamam.
tersasul.
Yes.
So it's the same thing
Yeah.
for typical.
Yeah.
What more for our neurodivergent individuals,
Yep.
our children, they constantly have to navigate a lot more.
Yes.
So be aware. Again, I am reminded of my dearest friend and Dr. Peter Vermeulen. Remember the context.
Okay.
When it's calm, we are able to perform and do our stuff easier. But when they are more stressed, like transition, going to a new school,
Yes.
moving house, going to a new place of work, that might change.
Yep.
And then do consider revisiting a therapy. May it be the clinical psychologist. Maybe the body needs another input by the occupational therapist in their movement.
Oh, this happened in COVID, right?
It
You were
happens.
Yes. I
When
think you were
many,
sharing with me
yeah,
after the first 6 months to a year.
Yeah.
How at that point in time, I remember because Timo was definitely one of them. kita terpaksa menambah apa yang
Intensity,
yes, intensity, and then benda-benda yang dulu kita ingat mungkin dah tak perlu,
Yeah.
diperlukan balik, diperlukan semula, and that's what we're going through now in puberty actually.
So I think perhaps the misnomer suddenly discharge is maybe for that particular goal.
Right. Okay.
But there may need to be other things to look at. But if there isn't, then you don't need to see the therapist. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Just keep an open mind.
the constant
Yeah,
interaction with our children, with our spouse, with anybody who's neurodivergent, or typical, just look out for the needs.
So it's needs-based.
It's needs based.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you for bringing this up.
Okay, no,
Yeah.
thank you. I think we're good with that.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
we'll take a little break before kita teruskan dengan topik kita yang kedua, ya. Alright, we'll see you in a minute. Hai semua, welcome back. Okay, so we're going to the second part. Kita tadi telah membincangkan tentang keperluan intervensi mungkin sepanjang hayat. It's long term, right? Intervention is in the long term. Now we want to move on to this next topic, which is kepentingan kita mengenali pakar dan membina perhubungan yang baik. Apakah manfaat untuk kita berusaha ke arah ni? So, I would like to get all your thoughts and the experiences that you have all had. How has it benefited you and benefited your child? Like, why did we feel this was an important point untuk kenali pakar? Who wants to go first? Anik.
Okay.
Sorry, kepala you dah lentok macam ni. I just took that. She's ready to talk. Okay. Yeah, if you can.
Okay, katalah masa for every family, biasanya ada satu yang jadi auntie doctor or uncle doctor yang is your GP that becomes your family doctor that knows your
Family history,
not just family
your
history,
quirks.
what
Yeah.
happens at home all the time, right? Because any small thing you go running
Has
with
become a family friend, you mean? Almost, or-
almost become like part of your family even if they don't come home, because you go
okay.
often enough that they don't just know your medical history, they know what's happening at home. Because kenapa terjatuh? Oh, apa? Oh, so you do taekwondo? Oh, and then each time you go, so how's your taekwondo going? So that becomes a conversation, right?
Right.
Because
okay.
you build that rapport and you build that relationship.
Okay.
So
And so why?
so
Why is that a big deal?
And with that, they will remember things and later on say, hey, remember hari tu kan jadi macam ni? So do you think this has anything to do with that? Because they connect the information you give to them differently because they are medically trained. Like kakak.
Right. So they
right?
have better information about you that sometimes you might forget to
Forget.
share also, or you don't think tak berapa penting. So kita pun tak berkongsi lah.
Yeah.
Tapi bila pakar kita, sebagai contoh ni doktor dah kenal dan lebih mengetahui diri kita, anak kita, keluarga kita, dia pun boleh actually dia boleh melaksanakan kerja dia dengan tugas dia dengan lebih baik.
And it's the
okay.
smallest things. Like I remember when saya jumpa pakar and realised that Nirav, bila kita pergi on flight, lepas habis flight tu, like after we land, after a couple of hours, he will have this nauseous feeling. He would feel like he needs to throw up. In fact, he would even throw up, and he would just want to lie in bed, hold his stomach, and we didn't know what was going on until we went back to the doctor, and she said, oh, I remember the OT said when he did too much swinging, he used to feel the same. So it's something to do with the movement. And then we managed to diagnose, she managed to diagnose that it was a vestibular issue. And with that, because there was a relationship and it was something the OT had reported back, we were told, okay, next time you're going on a trip, 3 days before you fly, start giving antihistamines and see how it goes. And that worked.
Right.
So kalau kita kenali pakar
pakar pun kenali kita dengan lebih baik. Okay.
dan dapat memberikan solution kepada masalah yang anak kita alami.
Oh,
and
that's
that
great.
makes life a lot easier.
Okay, and I think that's a easy one to understand,
Yeah.
kan? Sebab kalau anak kita tak neurodivergent pun, kita semua mungkin mempunyai klinik atau doktor yang kita biasa pergi, right? Desiree, how about you? Personally, how do you feel that mengenali pakar telah membantu Desiree sendiri, keluarga, Hans?
So kenali pakar ni, and it just hit me in my opinion on this. Ada dua benda. The first thing is mengenali pakar in a sense to differentiate apa itu terapi cara kerja, what do they do, speech therapy, apa yang mereka buat, developmental pediatrician, what do they do, because untuk parents yang baru dalam perjalanan ni, that's the first step of kenali pakar. Kenali apa sebenarnya pakar-pakar ini, what is their area of expertise.
Kepakaran
mereka. So
dan kepakaran yang penting untuk anak kita.
betul. So
okay,
because
okay.
when you get the diagnosis, memang even sampai sekarang I believe bila kita dapat diagnosis or from the assessment, developmental peds or clinical psychologist, sesiapa yang beri diagnosis or assessment, they will tell you, okay, anak anda perlu occupational therapy or speech therapy, tetapi mereka tiada masa untuk explain semua benda ni. What is exactly is
Yes.
occupational therapy.
Kita dapatlah senarai ni kan.
Yes.
Tapi
And-
senarai ni tak dihuraikan.
Yeah. So kenali pakar ni, from my personal experience, first thing kenali apa fungsi mereka dalam your child's toolbox. Life, yes. Toolbox and life.
Yeah.
Right, so that's
Okay.
the first one. And secondly, macam Anik cakap tadi lah, building that good rapport. And ada juga hubung kait dengan episod sebelum ni about being a detective. Kadang-kala when we see, sebab kita bukannya jumpa, for example, developmental peds, maybe in the beginning jumpa every 6 months, then it extends every 9 months, then every once a year. So memang tak jumpa anak kami every day or every month, kan? So certain things, when we are trying to be a detective to find out what's going on, something has changed, actually orang yang tak jumpa anak kami hari-hari ni, they are the ones that can pinpoint. And it happened with us last year when we went for our annual developmental peds appointment. My son had started having some issues, accidents with, terkencing dalam seluar and all that. And, but it's not at night. It's not bedwetting.
Okay.
Completely dry at night. But,
Okay.
so then the developmental ped sat us down and said, hey, maybe you are just not remembering that his bladder is a lot smaller than yours. If you can sit in the car for 1 hour and not and hold it, your child can't.
It's quite simple lah.
Yeah, it was such a simple answer.
Tapi pakar yang terpaksa bagi tahu kita sebenarnya.
Yes.
I suppose they have different, like you said,
Yeah.
medically trained
Medically
or like,
trained, and
different
they
set of
pick they
knowledge.
pick up on things, and
Yes.
because
Yeah.
they've seen your child after a period, they are able to see what the child
Changes
has progressed.
kan? Yeah,
And they
exactly.
will be the ones sometimes assuring you, hey, but compared to the last time, he can do this,
Yes.
this, and
Because they're
this.
focused on that. That's what they
Betul.
knew from
Yep.
the last time they met, right? And whereas kita hari-hari kita pun dah lupa you know apa yang dah jadi mungkin 2 tahun terdahulu and things like that. Okay, so very clear examples. And I'm gonna ask SK, and it's gonna be an interesting situation because she wears both hats. Dia kadang-kadang orang yang memerlukan dan akan mengenali pakar, tapi dianggap sebagai pakar juga. So maybe ceritakan bagaimana ini adalah sesuatu yang memanfaatkan from your perspective. Yeah, as
I
both.
will say how bersyukur I am that I'm able or the family has been able to interact with the pakar-pakar. Okay. A simple story that I will always remember at the point of diagnosis of Joshua by a developmental pediatrician. Actually, I want to acknowledge the late Dr. Lim, and we had, because he was only 18 months, to go to Singapore. Her most important, one of the key lessons she said to Chokman, my husband and myself, is by hierarchy, I'm here, but the most important peoples in your family for Joshua will be the therapists.
Yes.
That has
Sebab peranan dia lain kan?
peranannya lain,
Yeah.
and in many regards that really mempercepatkan all our search for pakar-pakar, like Desiree say, to understand quickly because the doctor has said it. Because by hierarchy, I think by our training, by our culture,
Yes.
the doctor is very important. And I
Nama
first-
pun doktor kan? Yes. Yes, sila sambung Dr. Choi, kakak
And
kita.
I do
Yeah.
want to honor the medical doctors and the pediatricians, but in many instances, the daily intervention, we talk about intervention, memang dikerjakan oleh
Allied health.
allied health therapists.
Yes.
And just like with anything else in our life, relationship is key.
Yes.
And when relationship is key, with somebody who is a subject matter specialist, is very special. And because I now if I wear a medical hat, I would say, or even as a layman, when your professional is relational, that's when you really can get to the root of any problems. You may be an engineer building a house,
Okay.
okay, but if the engineer is more relational, they will look after your needs. So if I pull it back, we've been very, very fortunate. And in that way, our practice Oasis Place, we are only able to have, I would say, very proud of our excellent practice because of the many relationship with the professionals who many of you all would have met. Kim
Definitely.
Bartel, Dr. Teresa May Benson, all this jago therapy,
Yeah.
Jeanette Swen, all these are household names in the therapeutic community.
Internationally.
Yeah. And my desire really is to work with our local therapists, of which many are excellent.
To upskill them as well, give them exposure.
Of
kan?
course,
Yeah.
and that's why coming back then to having the relationship with the specialists, because they are our care partners, kan?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So
Okay.
SK, kalau a person watching nak tanya macam mana nak jumpa pakar-pakar ni?
You have
how
a
do-
center.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do we find this?
It's like
we are
kenali
parents.
pakar. It's like okay lah.
Siapa pakar?
Bolehlah baca rencana yang ditulis oleh pakar ni. Macam mana nak kenal pakar ni? Wah.
Bila baca rencana tu,
kenali kerja dia lah.
Yeah.
But how do we
sangat rumit if you
Yeah.
look at the pakar and their reports.
Yes.
I think Kita Family Podcast like one, as we get to share resources. Parent support group will always share about
what they've learned exactly.
What
Parents
they
are
learned
very,
and
very, generous much.
who they learn it from.
Okay.
Okay.
That's one.
And that's how the circuit of reputation, of care, of quality, that the names are sebut-sebutkan dalam banyak group.
Okay.
Kan? So I think one of the best way, how do we meet them, is to be involved and engaged in support groups.
Okay.
In different podcasts like ourselves, I need to give it a plug. Kita Family Podcast. We are here to share
Yeah.
our experiences. Yeah.
But also,
The
kalau
Empower
betul-betul
Fest.
untuk
Kalau
yeah.
betul-betul nak jumpa pakar, katalah.
Katalah betul-betul kita nak jumpa
Thank
pakar
you.
cepatlah.
Please.
Sikit cerita.
Thank you.
I said it.
Thank you for
Empower
reminding
Fest.
me. Kita Family Podcast will be at our May Empower Fest, the Carnival of Inclusion and Neurodiversity. Don't forget to follow us. Clap. Please clap. Kita Family Podcast will be there on Sunday, which is 12th of May. But Empower Fest, please come and meet the experts from 10th, 11th, 12th at Avenue K Mall.
10, 11, 12 Mei.
May.
Dianjurkan
And
oleh?
Dianjurkan oleh Oasis Place
Sempena ulang tahun
ke 10.
It's open to public. There's no fees to join. Just look for the QR code and register for the sessions you want to go for.
Yes, please. So not only will we
exciting.
have a lot of, it's a whole carnival. We have inclusive vendors. There are merchants who are neurodivergent and typical. We are going to role model the inclusive lives of businesses, of
Yep.
services, and come and meet the experts. We have
And you get to meet experts this time tanpa bayaran.
tanpa bayaran. You just make sure you register because spaces are limited. We only have they are called the STAR activity. And not only will we have very fun activities, we have a fashion show, inclusive model, together with the Creative School of Lim Kok Wing. I give them a shout out. Please clap, 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 clap.
I didn't know that.
We are going to have talent time with, again, inclusive talents. And I will like to say, kalau you fan club Wings. Adri Hashim, the lead guitarist, is going to be there on stage with us for talent time.
Wah.
And again, a plug for Kita Family on Sunday. Thank you so much.
Selain daripada our launch show, ni adalah kali pertama lah yang akan kita akan
be doing
buat
live.
podcast live.
Yes.
And
okay.
please, we are going to cover topics across the lifespan, from early age to adults. You will get to meet professionals, medical professionals, and healthcare professionals who are autistic themselves.
Okay.
We will have discussions, we have panels, we will have mental health discussions with the whole family members, professional members. Please come and join us.
Okay, that's great.
That sounds so exciting.
I feel like, I feel like it's quite complete dah, like we have covered. But I think there are one or two, I want to both of you to have the opportunity to maybe share with me. Ini adalah suatu peluang kerana, sambutan ulang tahun Oasis, ada berkaitannya dengan bulan kesedaran autism. Tetapi kadang-kadang kita tak mempunyai peluang macam ni selalu. So, how would you say, any advice or suggestion, macam mana sebenarnya kita nak mengenali, pakar ni? I mean, can we be assume that we should be friendly with the like how does this work, right? You want to start off like a relationship with somebody. I mean, these are sort of difficult questions. I mean, we do anything for our children. But should you be stalking people
Okay, I think
on their media or whatever?
Maybe you should.
Do not stalk anybody.
Okay.
That's the first step one. Don't stalk anybody.
Okay.
And sorry to just jump right in, but if I could just share two examples of relationships that I've built over the years with the practitioners that work with my son. Firstly is, of course, our developmental pediatrician. We go to a government facility, so memanglah tunggu dalam waiting list. So I learned the power of emails. And that's how we actually managed to sort of move up the waiting list a little bit. Emails here and emails there, and then I had a call and we got in. And over the years, sebab anak saya pun ada masalah selain daripada whatever he was struggling with autism.
Okay.
Dia ada things like glue ear and adenoids, a 20 cent coin, not related, but memanglah.
So ada 20 cent coin.
Okay, that one is neurotypical, okay?
Yes,
Tertelan benda, termasuk benda di dalam.
Ada je adults pun tertelan benda, right?
Yeah,
So when in doubt, like about the glue ear and sebagainya, so I do sometimes pop an email to the developmental piece to say, hey, this has happened with my son, what do you think? And memanglah, I think kita sangat bertuah. We had one of the the better ones, maybe. I mean, they're all good, but the one who actually takes the time to reply to
and
my
was
emails.
also very responsive,
Very
very
responsive.
professional. But if I can share with them, I think Desiree sent email to like every doctor because she was hoping to see siapa yang mungkin ada schedule dia tiba-tiba appointment buka.
That is an
Vaccination ke apa.
engaged parent.
sikit lah.
Excellent.
Yes, not stalking, engaged.
Engaged.
Okay. Yes. So there are lines you don't cross.
Yes, and it's been an email relationship for almost 7 years now, and only very recently saya managed to get her mobile number, and also I think we have to respect everybody's boundaries.
Yeah.
Right? So only as and when needed. So for example, there was one time I couldn't make it for the developmental PEDS appointment. Memang susah nak dapat appointment berulang-ulang kan. Kalau miss setahun, you skip an entire year. And so happened COVID vaccine saya on the same day. So which do I go first?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so the power of email. I email and thankfully doctor heard me out. So they tukar by a few months, which is okay. And the
So
other,
even with
yeah.
the phone number,
Yeah.
you didn't feel the need to actually sort of use it, right?
Yeah.
So just sort of be respectful. And maybe the reason why you have such a good relationship with this person is because you've always been respectful.
Yeah.
Needs space,
Right?
needs space.
Yeah,
And
okay.
she's very kind. She includes me in talks, and whenever she needs a parent's perspective, she invites me for talks. And
So it's a proper relationship that
proper
benefits two ways.
It's
As
both.
SK was saying,
Betul.
that as a person who's doing their job, right? If you have a relationship, you are relational, you have better information, you'll do your job better.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
So, okay.
And another special shout out to our occupational therapist who's been with us since Hans was 2 years old. He's going to be 9 now, so dah 7 tahun. Memanglah sangat sayang dengan teacher ni. I don't know what I would do without her. And so that relationship memang from the start was a very close relationship sebab this person is coming into my home. Dia datang ke rumah saya untuk session. So and I see her 2-3 times a week. So memang it's a very close and open, honest relationship.
You know, we still have a relationship with Timo's therapist that Timo doesn't see anymore until today. You know this because some of them were at Oasis Place.
Yes.
Tapi diorang pun dah tak bekerja dekat Oasis Place. Ada yang pergi continuing education and move on or
Yes.
things or whatever.
Yes.
But and you know, it was wonderful. These are people who still, you know, send an email or text to say Timo's birthday, you know, and send a video to Timo because they know he prefers that.
That's
uh,
sweet.
compared to like membaca email or whatever. And I tell you, it's so nice. And because we still know each other, sungguh pun Timo dia tidak lagi mempunyai like sesi setiap minggu ke setiap bulan or whatever. Tapi saya masih ada pakar yang dapat saya rujuk.
Yes.
Because sometimes I can say, what do you think? I say, you know guys, we never saw this. Or do you remember when Timo used to do this? It's back.
Yes.
And they are just, you know, comfortable to do that. But like, okay, but then again, like how do we get to that sort of good rapport and relationship? I think this one I'm going to take a cue from you.
Yes.
I think
Like-
it's about being invested.
Right? And as parent at school,
and
the
parent at
analogy like what you do.
school.
Yeah, can you tell us all about it so that we share some tips, right? Macam mana nak jalinkan hubungan yang baik tetapi kita tidak cross the line atau melintasi, you know, apa-apa batasan yang tak apa sesuai and things like that. Can you give us some suggestions? I know you do this well.
Sometimes when it comes to these issues, you take it back to the therapist and say, these are the problems that the child is facing in school. And they'll give you ideas. And then you go back and get the teachers to try to, teachers who are open to suggestions. Okay, saya dah merujuk pada therapist, dia suruh cuba cara ni, kalau boleh, then cuba. So I remember Nirav in tahun 1 tak nak copy dari board when he could. And he was obsessed with Thomas the Tank Engine. He was obsessed. So all I said to the teachers, you know, the therapist said, will you try this? Will you take Thomas the Tank Engine in and tell him that Thomas is going to appear if he writes it down? He was crying, but he finished all his work. So
Okay.
so the teacher came out and said, it worked. And that just showed me that he can actually do it. He was just not motivated to do it. But the idea came from the therapist.
Okay, so the therapist was then sort of connected to the teacher through you. So that's one way. So the therapist also knows. Are you trying to say that the therapist knows that apa-apa yang dia, you know, cuba membantu anak-anak ni semua berkesan di luar sesi juga,
Di
right?
luar sesi juga.
Okay, and then continue. How else did you build the relationship?
And then you build a relationship with your pediatrician, and they will like Desiree said, they can't always see you, but if it's urgent, send an email, call the clinic nurse, and they will try to slot you in even for 15 or 20 minutes just to address the
Okay, we get
current
it. But
issues.
how do you build that good relationship?
So you
I'm
you
being
build
quite specific.
You build it, but the same way you build it with the teacher.
Okay,
you,
how?
You keep communication.
Yes.
You take well, for me, if I'm gonna give a present for Teachers' Day, I'll take a present for like a basket of fruits. Here, teacher. You know, here, doctor. Thank you very much.
Or like the therapist is also like macam anak ni cikgu lah, right?
You know, those
acknowledge. I mean, in Malaysia,
the thank you cards, remember?
Yeah.
The thank you cards.
so you don't actually even have to spend money also.
Correct.
Kalau rasa macam terlalu berat, tak ada masa, tak mampu, whatever. I think the cards go a long way.
You can even get your
Yes.
child to make the thank you card.
And
you know,
that's
because
right.
always
power.
The teachers do it for us all the time. Mother's Day, Father's Day, our kids make cards and bring it home to us.
Yeah,
The
actually, I
teachers
love
are
my
doing
cards.
It, right?
Yeah.
So Teachers Day,
yes.
something you can do. Make a card. Sit down with your child. Make
So
a card for
the
teacher.
normal human things lah.
Yes. So like
The normal
doctors,
human things, whatever how you want to appreciate
Yes.
people or whatever.
Yes.
You just make
Who
sure
wants
to
to
try
connect.
to do them also
Yeah.
with the pakar that is around you lah. And you know, well, for us, we're fortunate. It's culturally appropriate to give each other food.
yes.
And we have so many musim perayaan.
Yes.
So that one little, box of cookies or something, or you can even say, oh, please share this
Yes.
at the center
Betul.
that you go to.
Oh,
and
my
things
child
like
helped me
that.
make these cookies.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
even better, right?
Yeah, and we want to share these cookies with you. But I know of most doctors that have a appreciation corner in their
Yes.
clinics, and that
Absolutely.
motivates them.
Dinding dia
Yes.
penuh dengan all the thank
Penuh.
you notes and all that. Yeah, it's true.
And another good one is support them, support what they do. Tell your friends about them. Recommend them to others,
Yeah.
For example, because I think we do a lot of talks and all that. So when it comes to OT, I always go to my son's OT and say, hey, she's a good speaker. So when you do that, they know you appreciate what they're doing. And you value their professionalism and what they do
Yeah,
as well.
siapa tak nak dihargai,
Yes.
kan? We were
Orang
talking
nak-
about being
yeah.
celebrated and things like that. And you know what? Sometimes you don't know where it goes, right?
Yeah.
I mean, look.
Yes, exactly.
You know, we're all Oasis
we've
Place
all-
people.
yeah.
We've all gone either for a kursus or therapy or
Yep.
some workshop or whatever. And sometimes
Just share it on your Instagram.
God will
Share it on your
decide
story, yeah.
that there are other things, good things that
We're
that
not
can
just
happen,
Oasis Place
right?
people. We rock the spectrum.
We are.
Yes.
We
Kids.
are Project Hans.
Yes,
And we are.
We use Project Hans as a
Yeah.
resource. Oh my goodness, Autism Malaysia, of course, on Facebook.
Oh,
Nidhi
yes,
is not
yes.
here, and I think we all share a lot of that very important, more difficult and technical information because Anit gets to sit on Harapan OKU and
Yes.
and OKU Rights Matter and doing the kind of work that she does. It's like we have all relied on kepakaran each
Kepakaran,
other
yes.
in a way.
So the collaboration is the power of all that. Collaborative partnership with parents and educators, with parents and the healthcare people. Every time we at Oasis engage with the parents, we know that the goals and the outcomes will be stronger.
That's right. It's a win-win for
It
everybody.
It
right?
is.
So
And kita family,
yeah.
and that concept applies even when it comes to your kid, with the healthcare provider and with the therapist.
Yeah,
Kita family.
that's right.
Yes.
No, okay. I think that's good. If I can just, invite any last thoughts and on both the topics actually as we finish off. Would you like to share something, Nazari?
Yeah, so just to close off, I think in terms of Kenali Pakar, I think I've covered that at length today. Just I want to rewind a little bit to the earlier topic on the lifelong intervention and support. Even if our child's diagnosis changes in some way, and in some cases we do have level 3 autism going to level 2 or 2 going to 1, or sometimes they don't even need to hold the OKU card anymore. That's great, but remember, I think support is still lifelong.
Yes.
Don't dismiss that. I mean, celebrate it if you want to celebrate that. Okay, the level is gone to level 1. There's nothing wrong in celebrating that, but
we should. It's great, right?
acknowledge that the support is still needed. It may be different kind of support, but it's still needed.
Yeah, no, I think that's so true. I think if to give a very simple analogy untuk semua orang, bagi semua orang faham lah, okay? Katalah sebagai contoh, kita ni nak lose weight. Okay? Kita nak lose weight. nak diet, nak exercise, apa-apa semua kan. Okay. So kita buatlah. Kita memang berusaha. Sangat-sangat rajin. Okay. Diet, rajin. Exercise, rajin. So kita dapatlah. Nak kena hilangkan 5 kilo, 10 kilo tu apa. Boom, kita dah capai matlamat kita kan.
You need to
Boom.
maintain.
Kena maintain. Exactly.
Janganlah
Exactly.
pergi
So
makan
usually
nasi.
what happens is kita akan naik balik berat badan tu ataupun whatever. Kita tak dapat, kita tak dapat like maintain to the whole thing because maintenance requires work.
Yes.
It's a different kind of work. Maybe kita tak payah buat diet yang serious macam tu. Maybe kita boleh puasa sunat. I don't know. I mean,
Or
it's
some
just
physical activity.
different thing, right?
Yep.
So, but something is still needed. So
needed.
support is okay.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Kakak, silakan. Any last thoughts on either of the topics?
So just to echo that, be aware that intervention can be lifelong, but with restedness, and listen to the body, listen to our children's communication to be prepared. Sediakan bila perlu. Let us get support.
Right. So
And-
keterbukaan tu
Yeah.
kita berpegang pada tu lah.
Yes.
Right? Supaya kita pun jangan terkejutkan diri kita lah atau terlalu kecewa ataupun kita rasa macam sebenarnya dulu semua dah okay and then that's being hard on yourself also, right? So it's better to just sit in the gratitude, syukur, and then continue, and of course continue to syukur, right? But just know that I think we need to continue for overall health and well-being, mental health.
Yes, indeed. So that's really well put. I think the overall well-being, so be happy, maybe
Yes.
is a simple reminder. Don't worry, fear about this intervention. Just think of it as life support.
Yes. If you need it,
Please ask
Yes.
for it
And get it.
and get it.
yeah, that's right. Ani?
I think today I want to remember, like what Nori said, a lot of people who've been on the journey with us, right? These are people, some of whom have moved abroad, some of whom have moved states, but the common thing is they always say, "Hey, how's your kid doing?" And when one teacher said to me, "The next milestone is I want to attend his wedding." That just got me so emotional, and I thought, wow. So a
Other
big
people are invested in your child. Kan
Other
you seorang
people.
aja. Kan?
Yes.
Sebenarnya ramai lain yang mengambil kisah.
yes, and since I don't know, by the time this episode is aired, it will be May the 4th. And from Thomas the Tank Engine, when he moved to Star Wars, a lot of the people that worked with him remember that. So I think a big shout out to all those on the spectrum or neurodivergent people who like Star Wars. May the Force be with you.
May the force be with you.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. Okay, terima kasih semua. It's been a really good episode, remembering everything again. So we hope that you have learned something yang dapat membantu. So pada akhir episod ni, of course kita nak ingatkan semua, kalau adalah benda-benda yang membantu daripada menonton podcast kami, silalah like dan share dan follow dan subscribe. Ada juga Kita Family ni ada di platform-platform lain seperti Instagram dan Spotify dan TikTok dan Facebook @Kita Family Podcast. So please follow us along, kerana kita ada juga kandungan konten-konten yang lain, bukan saja episod di YouTube. But we hope to see you again soon.
Bye.
Bye.